So hi, I'm Shaquira and I'm with Amplify, and today we are talking with Bobby Blitz Ellsworth from Overkill. Hi Bobby, for new listeners, would you be able to describe the music that you create?
Hi, Shaquira. Good to be here. Good to be down under in some capacity at this point. I'm talking to you from the great state of New Jersey in the United States. The creation of what just happened for us is the culmination of a record called Scorched. It is released on the 14th of April worldwide. So that obviously will include you because you're part of this great big world. Um, it's a pandemic baby. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. We were just joking a little about, I had some free time in the pandemic and I learned to do a few other things. I think that in this case, when it comes to the music, we learned to push a few parameters and a few lines out, back into the traditional heavy metal. Maybe a little of the hardcore, a little of the groove, a big fat blues rides and rock and roll kind of stuff. So it's a unique offering for us, but I would attribute that uniqueness to the fact that there was the luxury of time that was attached to it, that being in the pandemic.
Now, as you mentioned, it is a pandemic album. So what was the creative process like creating this with the band members being everywhere and not all in one place?
Well, it was shit, is what it was. I mean, we come from an old school mentality when it comes to, how we've created things over the years. And there's a certain comfortability with that. I mean, the fact that we like being in the same room with each other. Somebody brings the pizza, somebody brings the beer, and somebody says, I got to get home, because I need to pick up the kids from school, but whatever it may be. But this time was totally remote. So it was, we didn't even have that. We didn't have the opportunity to make a choice. It was a choiceless situation, like for the rest of the world, obviously. But I think the results actually, the results were actually really positive because we were not total dinosaurs when it came to what's going on with technology and file sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So we just kind of embraced it, and I think as time passed and we kept saying no, unless we can tour, let's not release this record. The record developed more and more. I mean, especially between Dave and myself with regard to harmonies, Dee Dee adding some stuff to it. I mean, the skeletal shit was done all the way in 2020. But it developed into this big fist by, let's say, the end of 22 when Colin Richardson mixed it.
Lovely. And you have Travis Smith, who's been your artist for a while now, progressing through some albums. What's his piece and Scorch? How do they connect and what's the meaning for the band?
Well, I don't think that I can't really take any credit for any of the stuff he's done in the past. I mean, he's really more of a visionary than I would be. I think my partner Dee Dee is a little bit more of a visionary than I am, but Travis is way ahead of the fucking curve when it comes to, he likes us. He's attached to us, since like the late 90s. So, I remember back in 2012, he released a record called The Electric Age, and he was like, oh, I got something for it already. It was like, what? We didn't even have to bring anything to him. In this case, we gave him a few pointers, a few directions. We used the old symbol of the snake eating its own tail. We said, hey man, this could be cool, and he just started messing with shit. And before you know it, he had what was I suppose the meat and potatoes of the record, and that's the two demons that are kind of facing each other, balancing on their spines in some apocalyptic kind of a scene in the background. But it comes across like an oil painting, and that's really I think where the value lays in this. It doesn't look like just some illustration. It looks like it has value, it has depth, and there's a lot of care in it. And that's primarily due to Travis and that deep understanding of taking it to the next level.
And will this album be taking it to the next level, in your opinion?
Oh, for God's sake! I mean, it's like, yes, this is the best shit since canned beer and sliced bread, and you heard it here first.
So
I don't think I've ever, I never rate a record when they first come out. You got to give me a year to see where it stands. But we've been doing this for 38 years. There's a big amount of freedom in saying you don't really give a shit, when it comes down to certain things, because it lets us do what we want. Does it take it to the next level? Not necessarily. But for selfish bastards who don't give a shit, you get great internal satisfaction out of being able to create something that you wouldn't have been able to normally create under normal circumstances. So I'm happy with the results. But next level shit, I mean, save that for the youth of the scene.
And so you're introducing some new sounds into this album. It's more heavy rock with a bit more of a bluesy feel rather than thrash. What inspired the change?
I mean, we've always kind of messed with that a little bit, but I think it actually, it reared its ugly head on this a little bit more. You find it not in just full songs, but in certain sections. We're really about that center breakdown section when it comes to many of our songs. And for some reason, blues seems to be, or hard rock blues seems to be more that flavor throughout the record. Maybe 4 or 5 or half dozen times throughout it. So I don't know, except for the fact that for me it's somewhere I came from. I mean, I was reared on music in the 1970s. So when I heard the riff to Wicked Place, I was like, this is like fucking Foghat on meth, or steroids. This is amazing kind of shit for me. I mean, it's the kind of stuff I sang when I was a kid. So I think that to be able to go back there and kind of put a fresh coat of paint on something that was that important to me specifically, in that era, but being able to do it so many years later is just, I mean, boy, it's like it's just an absolute pleasure to be able to be involved in something that is of two eras of then, but hearing it and having created it in the present.
And it's your 20th studio album, so that's absolutely huge. Are you going to be celebrating?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Dee Dee out to dinner and gonna get him flowers.
Oh. No canned beer.
And canned beer, yeah.
Yeah. And how would you compare this album to your previous releases? Is it something that you'll continue to do as well, or do you think you'll go back to what you're used to?
It's funny. We don't usually talk much about what's going to happen with regard to final outcome. It's really just about aspiring to be better than you were the last time. And I've said this in interviews. I always aspire to be a better singer. I mean, my mother was a great singer. It's not that I ever thought of myself as a great singer. I was the guy in the room holding one of the guitars who was the one who wasn't afraid to sing because that's the way I was brought up. It wasn't, you would sing with her. My sisters would sing with her. She would sing with her sisters. So I always aspire to be better. And I think that that's the key in this record, but we've always taken that along. I don't think that it's about a big fucking plan. And I remember sitting with Dee Dee and he's like, what do you think? I said, geez, I don't fucking know. I mean, for God's sake, it's 20 records. I mean, what do you want from me? I said, we're going to do the best we can. And he goes, yeah. I said, something? Write it like it's the last record. If you write it like it's the last record in your head, you're going to succeed. And that was the only talking about it. So the point of taking that into the future, I think is probably a good principle, because I think there's success in that. I think that if it means as much as it's meant to us over this 38-year period of releasing, that if we think that this opportunity could be the last one, we're probably going to get successful results.
And over the past 38 years or so, as you've mentioned, do you say is your biggest career highlight?
Well, getting signed. I mean, that was amazing. I saw a picture in my other office of me, standing there. I got like a beer in a bag and, in a lawyer's office and the Zazulas were there, Johnny and Marcia Zazula. It's funny. I mean, the whole world was changing with regard to music at that time, or had changed. And I think, it's probably arguable, but I think, was it because of them or was it because of Metal Blade? I personally think it was because of them. I mean, they signed and released that first Metallica record, which changed the whole fucking game. All the rules were off from that point on, from 1984. And everybody says, oh, yeah, New Jersey's got an okay scene, but the Bay Area. I said, you know something? I said, you remember this. Those motherfuckers had to travel 3,000 miles east to have somebody recognize them and release their record. And that was in New Jersey. So I think getting signed is my biggest highlight. Probably a close second is the first European festival I ever did. That was in '94. It was Roskilde, and it was really eclectic. It was like Ray Charles was on one stage, and Anthrax, Midnight Oil, Chris Isaacs. We opened up for Chris Isaacs, Wicked Game and all that stuff, and it was really cool that it was so different. But there was maybe 100,000 tickets sold, but in front of us when we played, it was maybe 25,000 people. That was amazing. I'd never stood in front of that amount of people. So that's always something that sits in my head. Being signed, first big festival.
I'd crap myself in front of that many people.
And I'm not afraid to sing.
You got it all. And so you were talking about your first European tour. You now have another one coming up in April. What are you looking forward to most?
Well, this is a drug that I've been chasing since the 80s. This is the thing. This is the cherry on the cake. I mean, it's always fun to create the music and get it down with the guys. I mean, it starts with Dee, it runs through the whole gambit of the other boys, and kind of ends with me. But the thing that really trips my trigger and raises the hair on the back of my neck is being able to stand on a stage in front of people. I mean, it still feels dangerous, and it always still feels dangerous when you have a new record because it's untested material. I know it's like, hey, listen, it's 38 years. The people who are coming, they're the choir. You're preaching to the fucking choir. They're probably going to like it. But the point is, inside me, it still feels dangerous. And that's what drives me. So that European tour is a welcome change from this bullshit that we had gone through over the last couple of years with this pandemic. We did do some shows about a year ago. We did a short U.S. tour, but that was without new music. So add the new music, the European tour, followed up by a U.S. tour. It looks like it's going to be a hell of a year.
Can we expect to see you come down to Australia anytime soon?
Well, that's what it's all about. It's all about the AUD, and it's all. Yeah. I mean, I got to be honest about it. I can say, oh, I love this. I'll be there no matter what. I'm not paying these guys out of my fucking bank account when we come home. It's got to work out financially. We're always in contact down there. We've worked with some decent promoters in the past. We've had two full Australian tours. One was a 3-show, and I think the other one was a 5. So eight shows on the continent, and good fun. Every time, great people. It's so funny. You're so far away from the U.S., and I know you're cousins of the Brits, and we're cousins of the Brits, but I feel like I'm closer to the Australians when it comes down to what the mentality is. When it comes down to the metal, the pushing forward, the personality. I mean, it's a fucking great place to go have a good time. I mean, you feel like you're amongst your own people, is what I'm saying. So I really do enjoy it, and we will be pushing for something to happen throughout the touring cycle for Scorched.
Okay, well, any promoters are listening to this, we need them.
Yeah, underline, need. We're the best thing since canned beer, if you never heard of it.
Yeah. And so in 1980, at the very beginning of all this, did you think you would ever make it this far?
No, of course not. I mean, that was, we were taking it a day at a time back then. I think that, we're very lucky to have, I'm very lucky to have met Dee, and I think to some degrees very lucky to have met me because we managed the band. We were prepared to do it in the 90s when, when things got a little thin with regard to the popularity of the music. But he's a little more long-sighted, and I'm a little more short-sighted. So this way, I've always felt that we never really missed that many opportunities because he's looking down the road, and I'm ready to explode in the moment. But I never thought, this was going to be. I was in the university. My father had worked his ass off, and to get me in a good school, And I remember having to go to him and say, "Listen, I know I'm close, but I just got offered a deal." And he's like, "Bobby, is this about free beer and girls?" No, it's art. I swear to God. So it's like 25 years later, I'm doing this. I'm doing benefits for a guy who was a big sports star in New York, a guy named Mike Piazza. He was a New York Met, and he did all these benefits. And if he'd ask, I would do it for him. And he said to me, "If you ever need anything," and I said, "I need your box, your luxury box at the stadium. My father's turning 75." And he said, "Done." And he filled it with hamburgers and beer and gave me 15 tickets to the whole fucking family. And my father sat next to me and my brother. He put his arm around both of us. He looked at me. He goes, I knew this Overkill thing would work out. And I said, listen, 25 years ago when I left the university, it was about free beer and girls. She goes, I know, bud.
So good. And if you could change anything about the industry, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I guess you can't go back, and I'm not one of those guys who are going to pine over it, but I came in at the end of the age of excess. That's when, this is pre-digital. When I came in, it was cassettes and vinyl. And that's what we always wanted to do when we were kids, was make vinyl. But that's kind of back. That's kind of the cool thing about the modern era, is that as streaming as it is, there's still, the dinosaur of vinyl. And it could be a double gatefold and great pictures and lyrics and, a big thanks list. And somebody just asked me, why do you give a thanks list still? I mean, isn't that kind of like passe? I'm like, because we're thankful. That's why they give. You can do this shit by yourself. So, but I always loved that era of it. If I had to change anything about it, honestly, I don't think it's very fair that Live Nation runs all the shows and they're on the stock exchange. if you know what I mean. Now that might work for Guns N' Roses, but that doesn't work for us very well. So I think that that would be one of the things that I would change, or have some type of a revenue sharing, because it's, it puts you in a situation where, you have to. It's like when you said you come in Australia, I said, hey, it's all about this, Of course I want to come, but it's about that. It has to be, it has to make money. But I think it's a little bit harder sometimes to do that under the circumstances that everything's been crunched down and taken from, especially from the mid-range or mid-level and lower level artists.
And what is one piece of advice that you live by that you would give your fans?
Well, there's two sides to every problem. What really sucks is just going through the problem. But if you can do that, just remember how you did it and apply it next time.
Beautiful. And what's next for you?
I don't know. I think I'll probably go get another beer and do another interview.
Sounds good. All right, well, that is all for today. It was lovely meeting and chatting to you, and I can't wait to see where everything goes. And good luck with the album.
Shaquira, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you somewhere on the road.
You too. And everyone go check out Scorched on April 14th via Nuclear Blast Records. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers. Mate.